The crossover collab is a huge mod for Celeste that has one simple premise. How many game crossovers can we fit into one single mod? This mod originally released on the 5th of December, and only on the 11th of April was when I actually finished all the maps in this mod. Yeah, it gets a bit ridiculous at times. And after completing all of its 20 plus maps, including an extra arcade section, I can say that this mod is truly something else and probably one of the best there is in terms of quality. With it featuring some very well-known games such as Minecraft, Terraria, Hollow Knight, and Deltarune, it was great to see some games I was familiar with recreated here, and it was also great learning about some more niche titles such as Dadish, Brutal Orchestra, and the most niche game of them all, Tetris. And so in this video, I will be going over, hopefully, every map in this collab and giving my thoughts on them. Note that extra content such as berries, secret endings, and collectibles will not be covered here. Clearing every map already took long enough, so I can't really afford to go out of my way to get every secret there is for every map. And also, one more side note before we start about this collab's difficulty. This mod is not easy. Despite having upwards of 4,000 hours in this game, many maps gave me a really hard time. And while yeah, I do like a challenge, it does feel a little weird that one of the biggest mods for the game is this unfriendly for beginners. In fact, most of the difficulty ratings for maps are actually underrated by about 1 to 2 tiers. One map in particular, Brutal Orchestra, literally goes into the Red Grandmaster +1 range, which is literally harder than even the Grandmaster hard type from Strawberry Jam. But you'll just have to wait until the end of the video to hear my thoughts about that. I guess my biggest bit of criticism early on is that every map just felt way harder and longer than it really had to be, and that is probably going to be my biggest consistent complaint throughout this entire video. Oh yeah, and I gotta give one massive spoiler warning, because most maps shown here will in fact contain spoilers for the games that they're based off. But with that out of the way, let's begin by going over each map one by one.
Geometry Dash.
Now, I'm gonna be honest here, the only reason that I played this map first was because a friend hopped on this basically the day it dropped, and I sort of just got dragged into it as well. Now, am I qualified to talk about this map as a Geometry Dash pro with countless hours of experience? Well, yeah, duh. My hardest at the time of playing this was an insane demon, so you can pretty much just call me Zoink.
Oh my god.
This map is divided into 5 different levels, each of ascending difficulty, starting at the blue easy face and going up to the demon. The first couple levels are honestly still quite challenging. It's probably something to do with the physics, but this level definitely does not feel like a standard Geometry Dash 3-star. The mechanics overall were translated super well though. I find it impressive that they managed to fit in every single game mode from Geometry Dash and made them play relatively well. The spider's gravity switches were instant just like in the original game. The UFO plays pretty much the same in the Celeste version, and the ship, well, okay, the ship was maybe a little more janky, but that's okay. Also, we cannot just continue without talking about the demon level separately. This level genuinely goes so hard. It mixes in every mechanic from before and syncs it all perfectly to the music, but it's also just really hard. Apparently the main goal was to make this level be around deadlock difficulty, which I think for the most part it was achieved. However, keep in mind that I have around 20 times more playtime on Celeste, and this level probably took me longer to beat than Deadlocked. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to mention, the demon is not actually the last level in this map. That will be the extra finale level, which you only learn about after beating the demon. As cool as this level is, god damn it is dragged out. Which might not even be a bad thing necessarily. However, I think it's an objective truth that this level just goes on and on and on and on, adding part after part when you think it should be over. Oh yeah, and this part here was like literally impossible without turning on photosensitive mode, so screw this part in particular. With all that out the way, this map gets a solid A tier from me. Since when were we doing a tier list? Since now, of course. I don't know how you thought I'd make a proper review in any other way. Despite the slightly weird physics, I can look past that and say that this map was really fun to play and clearly had lots of effort put into its mechanics. Next up is the Portal map. Hell yeah, this one is awesome. Let me give you a bit of background with me and Portal. The only time I've ever touched this game was when I was young. And I mean really young, like 9 years old or somewhere around there. I played and completed Portal 2 on somebody else's PC when they were visiting, and I thoroughly enjoyed this game. And even though I never went back to replay the game or check out the first Portal game, I consider myself a fan of the series. Now as for the Celeste version, I also really like this remake, however, I have a few things to critique here. To explain to those who are unfamiliar, this map is entirely centered around the portal gun mechanic. Madeline wields a portal gun at all times, which you can use to spawn in a portal on designated blocks, with the 2 mouse buttons changing the color of the portal. These portals are used to solve all sorts of different puzzles, usually involving something like transporting these light orbs through the portal, or carrying around a turret to open up gates for you, or something like that. And while this is all cool, this map has one big problem for me. It goes on for way too long. The worst part isn't even the length itself, but the fact that it keeps telling you that the last obstacle course is ahead and all, but it still keeps going on. Like right after you pass the alleged final room, you just have to do a way longer, way harder vertical room. Like what the hell, man? This room took me like 40 minutes to beat. And this is apparently intermediate? Other than that though, I like this map. B tier from me. And our next map is Deltarune. I have pretty much nothing but good thoughts for this map. Deltarune is obviously one of my favorite games, so this one was already one I was very excited for. For a breakdown of the map, the only chapter from Deltarune represented here is chapter 2, starting at the Cyber Field, then going into Cyber City, and then ending at the Queen's Mansion, just like in actual Deltarune chapter 2. Each area has its own main mechanic. Cyber Field has these teacups from Deltarune, which are actually just reskin bubbles. Oh my god, what? Who could have seen this coming? The Cyber City has traffic blocks, and the Queen's Mansion, well, that one kinda just mixes both mechanics in at the same time. Even though I don't have any major critiques, I still want to complain about something, and that would be the mouse puzzle rooms. Deltarune featured a certain type of room called the Annoying Mouse Room, which was essentially a puzzle room based around moving a stream of mice into a hole by moving around blocks. The Celeste map has 3 of these, and I sucked at all of them. But that's about my only complaint, and even then, I'm just being salty, so just ignore everything I said, I guess. This map gets an A tier. Now let's move on to VVVVVV. Now this is the first game here which I've not ever played myself. However, I have heard of it, and also this game has a surprisingly large amount of influence over modded Celeste. The whole gimmick behind this game is that your regular jump is replaced with a gravity switch, and all of the platforming challenges are centered around this gravity switch. Overall, this was translated really well. You have quite a large and diverse pool of gameplay mechanics, all of which I'm guessing come from the core game itself. You have these gravity barriers which instantly switch your gravity upon coming into contact. You have conveyor belts that move you into one direction, along with some other miscellaneous mechanics such as these moving enemies. This map also has a ton of dumb jokes and stuff, like this better to avoid it section with the moving Ahorn logo. Because haha, get it? Ahorn sucks and you should avoid it. My only real complaints here are random uncalled for difficulty spikes like the final room and whatever this garbage is. But aside from that, this map is really well made, has smooth and polished gameplay, and was generally a great experience to play through. Solid A tier map, I'd say. Next up is Minecraft. You guys ever heard of this one? It's a pretty niche game these days. Now there is one big thing that separates Minecraft from Celeste. Celeste is very much not a 3D game, while Minecraft is. So right away translating this game into Celeste is not so simple. I do think it was done mostly well though. It consists of some pretty standard Celeste gameplay with some Minecraft inspired mechanics thrown into the mix. Some of these get really creative. It features things like chests that open up to give you dash crystals, blocks of wool which slowly burn and disintegrate, and vines you can climb on, just like in the actual game. The pool of non-Minecraft mechanics in this map are also chosen well. You have the swap blocks from Mirror Temple along with the Zipper Dream blocks and those weird rail blocks that move when you dash into them. Unfortunately, only the Nether dimension was recreated, but that's honestly completely fair. The overworld is simply too large and diverse, and the end is too small and lacking in content. If only Mojang wasn't prioritizing baby mobs over the whole end dimension, that wouldn't be the case. The Nether is just the right size to where the whole dimension can be recreated without leaving any parts out. Overall, this map was fun, but it didn't do anything exceptional to stand out, and honestly the gameplay was a little weird and janky at times, so this map will have to get a B tier from me. You wanna know a fun fact? I have never played Tetris myself. Don't get me wrong, I know how the game works. It has probably one of the most simple concepts out there, and plus this seems to be the go-to game to play for students when they are bored in class, so I've seen plenty of Tetris gameplay. Translating this game of all games seemed to be quite difficult. Considering Tetris doesn't even have a playable character, you kinda just move the blocks around like an omnipotent force to line them up in a row. This map takes that exact concept but makes you have to physically move the blocks by giving you infinite dashes and making you control Madeline, making this a whole lot more janky than you'd ever expect. The rules of the game are the exact same. A random set of blocks will fall from up top, you can dash into it to rotate it around in midair, and your goal is to line up these blocks in a way that makes a row. If you get enough rows, you win. If the blocks reach the top of the screen, you lose. While this concept seems simple, this idea gets innovated and expanded upon a lot. In the further levels, you end up seeing mechanics such as indestructible blocks, rainbow refills that let you destroy parts of a falling block, even dream blocks that split the room in two, making you have to manage 2 Tetris boards at once. While this is fun and all, I've got one major problem. It all goes on for way too long. Not only are there ridiculous amounts of rooms, but the ending just feels really random and unnecessary. This map concludes with some bizarre storyline about how all the Tetris blocks are secretly aliens that want to take over the Earth, and then they start firing lasers and bullets at you as you try to destroy the power boxes that supply them. Like, it's cool, I guess. I just don't see how this is supposed to be Tetris in any way, and it definitely wasn't what I wanted to play after hours of sitting through never-ending levels of mildly annoying Tetris gameplay. B tier from me solely due to the concept and custom mechanics featured, because it really felt more like a C tier to actually play through. Next up is Subnautica, Part 1. There is a second Subnautica map in this collab, and I have much more to say about it than this one. This section probably won't be too long because my thoughts aren't too detailed for this map. I haven't played Subnautica myself, so I can't comment much on how well it translates from the original game. However, I'm assuming it only stays faithful in its visuals and atmosphere rather than its gameplay, considering all of the mechanics used are pretty generic vanilla and modded mechanics. You have your standard water-themed objects, pufferfish, bubbles, surprisingly no jellyfish. Interestingly enough, super dash crystals were added in, you know, the ones that let you have long bendy dashes like in Super Luminary or something. Oh yeah, and also gravity helper? Yeah, what the hell is going on in this map? Nothing else here is too noteworthy. My only gripe here is that the gameplay is kinda convoluted at times and made me have to look up a video to complete. So this map gets another B tier. Our next map is OMORI, and I am so excited to talk about this one. OMORI is probably one of my favorite games I've played. It tells its story in such an awesome and creative way. I cannot stress how important it is to skip past this section if you're planning to play this game spoiler free, even despite this map only covering a single area from that game. This map depicts the deep well area from OMORI, with 4 of its main characters being present: Kel, Aubrey, Mari, and Basil. Oh yeah, and the goat Mr. Jawsome, can't forget about him. It's probably a good time to talk about how these recreations should be structured and what truly makes a game remake good. If you don't add enough features from the original game into the remake, it might feel unfaithful, like you're just playing regular Celeste but with some graphics imported in from the original game. On the other hand, if you just remake the whole game pixel for pixel, mechanic for mechanic, then it might as well not be a remake. If the Celeste element is completely gone, then you can't really call it a crossover anymore. It's more so just a port of the game into a different engine. I would say the OMORI map lands roughly in the middle of the spectrum. However, it's certainly leaning a bit closer to being unfaithful. For the most part, you are playing regular ass Celeste with zippers, dream blocks, and jellies like you'd see in any other mod. However, there are just enough features from OMORI brought over into this map to make it feel just faithful enough. Things like the dialogue cutscenes with the graphics and audio ripped right from the game, as well as this berry where you collect as much life jam as you can under a timer. Well, maybe the collectible life jam isn't exactly like OMORI, but the idea at least seems in the spirit of an OMORI puzzle. Oh yeah, and if you thought OMORI was supposed to be a sad or scary game, well the very last section kind of just inserts some vague lore about the characters in the Celeste universe that's supposed to be emotional or something. It's pretty interesting, and you get one final song from Mari before completing the map. This is one of my absolute favorites in this collab. Yeah, I know I'm a bit biased just because I like the source material so much, but I think it's still worthy of an A tier. Okay, so the next map we're talking about is Super Paper. This one was, interesting, unique. Let me not sugarcoat this too much more. I did not particularly enjoy this map, and I will go into detail about why in just a second. This map is of course based off the Super Paper Mario game, a game which I have not played, nor do I know even a single thing about. So for this reason, I won't really be talking about how this map translates to the original game or anything. The gameplay featured in this map is like really strange gravity helper gameplay with a couple of cycle-based custom entities, mostly in the form of these moving things that you can use to gain momentum. The general progression loop of this map follows you going through a bunch of doors over and over, sometimes even going back to previous doors that were previously inaccessible with newly gained stuff from other doors. Ultimately, my biggest issue here is that I don't think this map's gameplay was pulled off the best. It's so wacky and unconventional, most of the time it doesn't feel like what you're doing is right at all. And I don't want to be too harsh towards this map, but once I finished it, I felt nothing but relief that I no longer had to play that, especially after spending 50 minutes on the final room. But maybe that's just on me. C tier for this map. So originally I was intending on actually playing the Earthblade map next. However, for some inexplicable reason this map would crash anytime I tried to open it, so I chose the next most reasonable map to play, Dadish. Once again, I'd never played or even really heard of Dadish before. However, I'd imagine this game is similar enough to Celeste where all the core elements were able to be translated into the map. It's a basic 2D puzzle platformer with mechanics such as a double jump, movable blocks, and moving platforms. I think this map was able to capture a very light-hearted and wholesome feel. All the gameplay was polished well, and there was a basic storyline throughout the map to keep it interesting. This map is divided up into separate sections that function similar to Celeste checkpoints. Each new section brings a different theme and new gameplay mechanics, with everything concluding with one final boss fight against Madeline. It's great. Not really much to complain about. This map is a solid B tier from me. Alright, so this next one we're looking at is a pretty unique one. Funnily enough, this collab has something called fusions. These are essentially just two pre-existing maps that have been smooshed together into one single map. Can you take a guess which two of the existing maps have been fused together? Time's up. If you guessed Tetris and Portal, then you're right. This is Cakes and Squids, featuring the mechanics from both the Portal map and Tetris map fused into one. Even though the choice of maps to be fused is questionable, they are able to fuse together in a really creative way. If you remember the section on Portal and Tetris earlier, you know that both of these maps suffer the syndrome of being way too long and dragged out, and this fusion also suffers a similar issue. While yes, this map being obscenely long is definitely not the greatest, I do think it's a bit more bearable than the Tetris map. In general, the rooms tend to be harder, but there are less of them in total, rather than a lot of smaller, easier rooms, but there's a million of them and they turn into alien warfare at the end. As for how the Portal elements were integrated into the Tetris elements, the Portal gun unfortunately wasn't able to be lifted into the map, so you instead get some gimmicks from Portal like these laser cannons, character switching between Madeline and Madeline, and apparently basketball. This map is really fun, but I'm sorry, I still think it goes on for just way too long for my liking. B tier for Cakes and Squids. Right, so for our next map we've got a fan favorite. Any guesses to what it is? It's a Hat in Time. Yeah, so people are honestly crazy for this map, and having beaten it myself, I can see where they're coming from for sure. However, it's a bit more of a middle of the road map for me. Once again, I need to disclose that I have not touched or seen any content relating to A Hat in Time, so maybe a bit of the appeal of the map is lost on me for that reason. This map involves you going through a series of wide open aerial rooms, all of which have super nice and clean visuals. Something I appreciate a lot about this map is that upon completing each room, it actually points out where you are on the map. Even if this seems like a bit of a bad practice, I often find myself looking at the debug map when playing a Celeste mod just to see how many rooms I've left, so the fact that I can do that without feeling like a dirty cheater is great. The main defining mechanic of this map is the balloon, which probably has some significance to the source material or something. Go crazy in the comments, A Hat in Time players. These are very basic but still fun objects to play with. You simply bounce them to get a vertical boost upwards along with regaining your dash. Or if you really feel like it, you can dash into them to do a balloon super, resulting in extra horizontal distance. These balloons, plus this new bell mechanic that switches around these colored blocks, mixed in with vanilla mechanics made for a pretty fun and clean feeling experience. I would give it an A, however, I think it's a little short and doesn't do anything completely outstanding, so I'd have to settle on a B tier for this map. Oh, what's this? A B-side? Damn, okay. There has been a surprising lack of these in the collab, I suppose. For full transparency, I did not actually beat this map directly after finishing A Hat in Time. It ended up being my last Collab map I completed for one simple reason. Getting to this map is needlessly hard. Not only is it not really marked anywhere where you find the cassette tape, but also it doesn't show up on the debug map, which is respectable, sure, but it never feels nice being denied the right to cheat. For those who are confused, the way you get the cassette tape is by dropping down in this room, then following these arrows through a completely separate string of rooms until eventually getting to the tape. Anyway, the actual map itself is really fun and well made, but I do still have one big issue, and that is the length. Who could have guessed this one? Even though it's listed as 11 rooms, each room has multiple checkpoints in it, so it just ends up feeling way longer than it has to be. On top of that, this map is supposed to be expert, but some parts really just felt more Grandmaster than they did expert. But okay, I'll stop complaining for now. Because if you set all that aside, this map does do a good job with its gameplay. It really felt like it completes what was missing from the original A Hat in Time map, which while being fun, it didn't challenge me quite as much as I would have hoped it would. It uses all of the mechanics from the original map like zippers, switching blocks, and balloons, and mixes it in with expert tech and movement to make some really awesome gameplay. But once again, it was one of those maps that left me completely exhausted by the end, so much that I have to give it another B tier. Sorry, but it really does overstay its welcome. And now we've got Netscape Navigator. Holy, this map is tough. This map isn't one single game in one, but rather multiple smaller sections for different games that just weren't able to get their own separate map. Or you'd think that'd be the case, except for some reason there's a section for Hollow Knight even though it gets its own full map. Like what the hell, why does specifically Hollow Knight get this treatment and not any other map? Not that I'm complaining though, the Hollow Knight section was really fun with this White Palace style platforming that flows surprisingly well with Celeste mechanics. Aside from that, there's a Sonic section, which is low-key really easy. You kinda just do a few jumps back and forth, and you're basically completely done. You've also got a section for Pizza Tower. Now, as a certified Pizza Tower professional with my 5.5 hours of playtime, I can say that this section was pretty accurate to the game. You make your way through this big open course, with the game giving you agency to take things at your own pace, only for it to set a time limit as you have to make it all the way back to the start before getting killed. Then there's also a section for Undertale and Cave Story, both of which are really short with minimal gameplay. I've also never played Cave Story, so I don't really know how it translates into the Celeste. And finally there is a section for Yumi Nikki, which is by far the hardest. This section adds the incredibly evil flute mechanic. We have to bind an external key that toggles these string blocks from being on and off. It's not only the fact that you have a whole extra key to manage, but also the fact that the gameplay is genuinely not easy. It's fast paced and precise dream tech, all while you have to constantly switch the state of the dream blocks at just the right times. This room took me way longer than I'd like to admit. And that right there was the last of the maps in Netscape Navigator. It feels like a collection of miscellaneous games rather than its own fully polished map, but I really appreciate it for now, and plus some of the games here I'm a really big fan of, such as Undertale and Hollow Knight. So this one's getting an A tier. Finally broke the streak of B tiers. King of Thieves is a mobile game released in 2015 that, for some reason, has a map in crossover collab. Now, I haven't played the game itself, but from the looks of things, it's a 2D platformer style game. Shouldn't be too hard to import into Celeste, right? And yeah, I'd say this map probably managed to implement a lot of the original mechanics into Celeste quite well. This map has you going through a sequence of doors, or dungeons I guess, with pretty basic techless gameplay that's often centered around some new mechanic from each dungeon. These include things like heads that spew out streams of bullets like this, chainsaws that move towards you once they detect you, and these flies that home in on you. I honestly don't have anything else to add. This map isn't bad, it's just not that interesting to me, maybe because I also just don't have much of a connection towards this game. B tier map from me. So for the next map I played, I decided to return once more to try out Earthblade, and miraculously it did not crash this time. And now that I was actually able to play it, well, I had quite an interesting experience. Now I'll give you a bit of context for those who don't know. Earthblade was originally going to be another game developed by Extremely OK Games, the creators of Celeste. However, this game ended up being cancelled completely. I guess this map thought to take on the role of recreating this game in Celeste. I never really kept up with the development of Earthblade myself, so I don't know a whole lot about the game. However, it literally doesn't even exist, so I guess most people wouldn't either. So what is this map about then? Well, right away before even opening up the map, you get flashed with this super scary Grandmaster label, which already makes this one of the harder maps in the collab. The first segment or checkpoint isn't anything too crazy. The central mechanic are these eyeball fish things, which work exactly like a farewell puffer. Some of the gameplay gets a little wacky and unorthodox. Landing onto this falling block and hyperdashing off it isn't exactly the most natural feeling input. What's pretty cool is that this map ends up looping all the way back around just for these switch gates to move around and change the layout of the map. And also, oh, the game crashed again. Why does this map keep doing this? If you can get past your game crashing though, you'll be able to progress through the rest of the map where you're presented with another new mechanic, these swinging blocks. The map ends up going all out in the final few rooms, giving you an extra mid-air jump and throwing in a ton of weird ass tech like eyeball fish gulchers and whatnot. It honestly got a bit exhausting towards the end. The gameplay being kinda weird and lasting for so long is probably what ended up lowering my experience with this map the most. For the most part though, this map is pretty good. There ends up being one more backtrack section for you to go through before reaching a cinematic conclusion. The visuals and decoration here look super nice, and the debug map art is honestly amazing. My experience was just weighed down by the gameplay a little bit too much. B tier for this map. Going from one Grandmaster map to another, it's time for Subnautica, the alleged second hardest map in the collab. Wait, what? Subnautica? Didn't we already have this earlier? That's what I thought too, but once you complete the first Subnautica map, a second one appears on the desktop. I just happened to only see it after completing Earthblade. Don't ask me why there are two Subnautica maps. I mean, maybe two people just really like Subnautica and they both decided to make a map about it. Anyway, this map is considerably harder than the first, and ultimately it ended up being a more fulfilling experience, not to throw any shade towards the first map. Before you even start the map, you get presented with an optional gym sequence to teach all of the tech. Only a single other map in this collab has that, but we'll talk about that later. The tech shown here isn't even simple tech. It's stuff like Gultras, it's stuff like crouch climbs, and it's stuff like corner boost B-hops. Oh yeah, and also, you have these Shattersong style fields which remove certain attributes from Madeline while you're inside of them, such as your ability to neutral jump, your ability to dash, and your ability to regain your dash while on the ground. And the final main mechanic of this map are momentum feathers, which do exactly what you think they do, carrying your momentum when you enter the feather to when you leave the feather. Now, as for how the map actually uses these mechanics, I think they're all combined together into a really well made and fun experience. It's all still really hard though, probably around yellow GM or bordering red GM. This single room here took me somewhere around 40 minutes to clear in total. This map also has a complete thematic shift towards the end, transforming into this hot orange climate rather than the greenish blue water one. The gameplay isn't actually too bad here, while it's still quite flashy and fast, the actual inputs you have to do aren't too hard. Maybe I'm the only one on this, but the orange section didn't seem all too hard compared to the previous one. And that about concludes everything I have to say for this map. It's challenging for sure, but it absolutely felt worth it in the end. All the gameplay was made with quite a lot of polish and it had some cool creative moves. Not quite an S tier, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it. Solid A tier experience. For our next map, we have a pretty wild one, honestly. Most of the games featured here so far have had a pretty predictable style and genre. Platformer, story game, puzzle game. However, this map chose to recreate a survival horror game. It steals. Once again, this title had never even crossed my mind a single time. However, unlike the other games which I hadn't played before, I decided to actually watch a playthrough of this game on YouTube. And yeah, it seems like a pretty neat 3D horror escape game. It just made me really curious as to how some of the mechanics would be recreated in Celeste, and in truth, it's mostly a regular Celeste map with some of the visuals taken from the original game. Well, calling this map regular isn't really doing it justice. This map has some of the most unconventional and strange Grandmaster gameplay I've ever seen. It also has a very claustrophobic vibe, along with tight corridors, spikes, and one-tile wide gaps all being very prevalent. There isn't a whole lot of tech that's used, there'll be the occasional wave dash or something, but for the most part the gameplay relies on precision and generally understanding the nuances behind the moving blocks and such. The one mechanic that was brought over into this map from the original game was the flashlight, which you can bind to a key to light up the place. If you couldn't already tell, this map is dark. Like, really dark. Basically, only the stuff directly in front of you or the stuff surrounding a light source are visible, with the rest being pitch dark. The flashlight does help by giving a brief window where the room is lit up, but I didn't end up really using this mechanic too much. Now, while the gameplay was cool and quirky and all, there was still one major issue in this map that plagued so many others: the length. Crossover collab maps seem to really like overstaying their welcome, and this one is no exception. By the time I beat this, I ended up feeling really exhausted from the sheer amount of rooms. I really do want to put this into A tier due to how unique of an experience it is, but I think just due to the absurd length, I have to keep it in B tier. Sorry, I do think this map still rocks though. With that map out of the way, 3 big maps still remain to cover: the Hollow Knight map, the Terraria map, and the hardest map in the collab, Madeline's Brutal Orchestra. Oh, and Catbird, I guess. Yeah, we should probably talk about that one too. Catbird is a really fun and wholesome experience. Being only beginner difficulty, I was able to complete this map in one sitting, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It shouldn't be too surprising at this point that I haven't played nor even heard of this game before playing this collab, so once again, I'm not able to speak on how this map managed to translate the mechanics into Celeste. This map completely takes Madeline's moveset and reworks them entirely. Your dash and wall climb are removed, being replaced with a double jump, as well as this mid-air glide ability that functions similar to a jelly. I genuinely love how much attention to detail was included here. Every jump, death, and spring here have their own sound effects, and the visuals all feel really clean and satisfying. You even get the return of some old mechanics from Dadish, like the movable box and moving sword blades. While the gameplay is very simple and not particularly interesting, I think solely due to the high level of quality shown, it's gotta go into A tier. Genuinely a really well-made, wholesome experience. Alright, for real now. With this map out of the way, we can move on to the last 3 maps remaining: the Hollow Knight map, the Terraria map, and the... oh wait, there's another map. The Tale of a Rad Cat, a beginner fusion. Alright, well, I guess we'll have to cover this first. The Tale of a Rad Cat is yet another fusion, this time between Catbird and Dadish, 2 maps which seem to be a completely perfect match for each other. Now this map should be self-explanatory enough. Like I said in my Catbird section, many of the mechanics from Dadish were already in that map, so the gameplay in this fusion is quite similar to that in Catbird. The double jumping and gliding mechanics from Catbird are featured in this, still no ability to wall jump unfortunately. A section that I found pretty fun was this part with the upwind, where you're able to glide directly upwards just like if you had a jelly. Now these upwind sections were also in Catbird, however in this fusion you now have Dadish mechanics like saw blades and moving blocks? Yeah, if it's not already obvious, I don't really have much to say about this map. It's one of the less impressive ones in this collab, yet it also doesn't do anything offensive. I guess it's destined to be placed into B tier just like the rest of them. Okay, for real now, we only have 3 major maps to cover, all of which are really challenging in one way or another. Hollow Knight and Terraria are both absurdly long, and Brutal Orchestra is just really hard. Out of these 3, my choice is going to be, Hollow Knight. It's going to be Hollow Knight. Let's get one thing out of the way real quick. 1000 hours on Hollow Knight. Even before playing this collab, I was really excited to play this one, and honestly, it did not disappoint in the slightest. In fact, I actually ended up loving this experience to death, so let me make this section of this video unnecessarily long to get all my thoughts out about this map. Oh yeah, and Hollow Knight spoilers of course, you have been warned. To very briefly summarize Hollow Knight for those who don't know, it's a 2D Metroidvania slash platformer slash combat game where you traverse an open world, finding enemies and unlocking new abilities. The more abilities you find, the more areas you can access, and it's all non-linear, so you can make your own routes when playing this game. The Celeste map recreates this absolutely perfectly. For one, the Kingdom of Hallowness is recreated basically 1 for 1. While yes, the rooms themselves are obviously different, the layout of all the areas is the same, and you even get a map to view the world along with frequent fast travel stations in the form of benches. The Metroidvania aspect is also implemented really well. You start off with literally nothing. No dash, no wall jump, only movement directions and a jump. And also a nail. One of the central gameplay mechanics of Hollow Knight is the nail, basically just a sword that the knight swings to attack enemies with. While this seems rather limited at first, there's a lot that you can do with it, such as slashing it down on spikes to pogo off them. This is a mechanic that was brought over into Celeste really well in my opinion. There are many segments which require you to utilize this usage of the nail to progress. Now if I'm being real here, this map gets pretty wacky at times. Hollow Knight had its fair share of tough platforming sections, but this map genuinely feels like you're playing a Deco Master creation with how tight some of the gaps are. But anyway, the more you play and explore the world, the more abilities you end up unlocking, such as the ability to wall jump, dash, and climb jump. Funnily enough, tech is also locked behind abilities. When you first get the dash, you won't be able to wave dash or wall bounce until you get the abilities to do so. As if this map couldn't get any cooler, they added full-on Hollow Knight boss fights to this. The first one I encountered was the Watch Knights fight, which ended up being both really fun and challenging. I actually had to rebind my controls to be like my Hollow Knight binds, just so that my muscle memory could carry me through this fight, because believe me, I was never doing this with my Celeste binds. Unfortunately, I didn't end up getting all the content of this map. I'm pretty sure there's a whole White Palace segment of this map, but I just didn't quite have the time to do it all. And while I do have mostly positive things to say about this map, the map is massive, really extensive, and there's pretty much always something to do, I do have some very small gripes with it. For one, the fact that the only way to access Monomod's archives is through a random ass hidden wall that has absolutely no visual indicator or markings. I mean, hiding important areas behind obscure hidden walls is a Silksong thing to do, not a Hollow Knight one. This issue of having important things locked behind hidden walls can also be found in the Deep Nest area. It's honestly kind of stupid that to get to such a crucial area, you need to just happen to stumble into the correct hidden wall. My other major gripe is that some of the hitboxes on the boss fights are not that great. I'm mostly talking about the fight with the Hollow Knight at the end of the map. It's so hard to hit this boss with your flimsy ass nail, yet it's able to reach you from halfway across the screen with its triple strike. Where's the consistency at? But hey, I respect that they made this fight just as buggy as in the actual game. Seriously though, what the hell is it doing here? Both of these gripes are really minor though, and they only apply to a small section of this map. Other than that, I love this map so much. It brought everything I love about Hollow Knight into Celeste and recreated it perfectly, while still having the gameplay have a distinct Celeste feel to it. I see no other spot for this map other than in S tier. It really deserves it. Alright, let's just get to the point already. The Terraria map. Most likely the single biggest map in the entire collab. Did I enjoy it, and do I think it's good? Well, it's a little mixed. I'm going to put a similar disclaimer here as with the Hollow Knight map to state that I have 1,000 hours on Terraria, and 1,400 on modded Terraria. If you somehow don't know about this game, it's a 2D open world game where you traverse the world to find new materials, craft upgrades, and fight bosses to progress. While this may seem similar to Hollow Knight, it's actually quite a lot different. Terraria is much more sandboxy, every world you play is auto-generated, and you have mostly free control over which blocks you break in place. Of course, making auto-generated worlds with complete freedom over breaking and placing is not particularly easy to do in a game like Celeste, so it honestly functions more like the Hollow Knight map. Let me just say that this map ends up being way more non-linear than the Hollow Knight map ever could be. Right from basically the start, there isn't a clear objective or set path to take. You can go practically anywhere as long as you have the abilities for it. And this is awesome. It parallels Terraria super well in this regard. Every player will take a different approach when playing this game. Maybe they'll go into the underground jungle early on, or maybe the underground desert or snow, or maybe they won't touch any of these and just stick to the regular caves. Granted, in this map, there are some areas that you absolutely have to go to, or you simply won't be able to progress. Most of the biomes from Terraria were able to be recreated in this map, which I find to be super impressive, and they each have their own structuring and gameplay feel to it. At times, I'm not really the biggest fan of the gameplay because it can be structured really awkwardly at times, but it ends up feeling more like Terraria because of it. If every room was structured like your standard expert tech spam room, I don't think it would have had that distinct Terraria feel to it, so it ends up making the map feel extremely faithful in the end. And believe me, at times this map goes above and beyond in trying to feel like Terraria. You see, there are many fundamental elements of Terraria that simply aren't present in Celeste, mainly things like items and a variety of enemies, at least if you don't count Seekers as enemies, I guess. However, this map ends up basically implementing an item system. While yes, Terraria has thousands of items which obviously can't all be implemented into Celeste, it does have somewhat of an inventory system where you can use items such as bombs, dynamite, and even a portable drone transform that lets you squeeze in between tighter gaps. So not only were items implemented into this map, but so were enemies from Terraria. Quite a lot of the most common ones are featured here, enemies such as zombies, slimes, chimeras, hornets, and a ton more, including bosses such as this kind of weird skeleton fight, I don't know, it's a bit goofy. To even complete the map, you have to defeat the wall of flesh in the underworld by running away from it and throwing dynamite at its face, which is certainly not something I would expect to see from a Celeste mod. It shouldn't be a surprise that this map is absolutely huge, and I most certainly didn't experience all the content it had to offer. Length has been a major complaint of mine throughout this entire collab, And while yes, this map absolutely ended up exhausting me once I was done, solely due to the length of it, I ultimately think this length is justified though. It is the Terraria map after all. Yes, the gameplay can be really weird and frustrating at times. Yes, it's absurdly long and oftentimes doesn't guide you nearly as well as it should. And yes, it's not always clear what's moving you towards the end and what's moving you towards something optional. But I think I have to give this map an S tier. Was my time playing this really an S tier? That's debatable. However, this map has some of the most effort and level of quality put into it that just can't be brushed aside and put into a lower tier. If you decide to play this map, it's going to be quite the crazy experience, that's for sure. Alright, so, time to finally talk about Brutal Orchestra, right? Well, not quite. You see, in Celeste Collab tradition, there's a final challenge in the form of a Pointside at the very end that goes through every map in the collab one last time. And just like many other collabs, the absurdly difficult out-of-place hardless map is not a requirement to unlock this final challenge, just to spare the players a little. So with every other map done, it's finally time to cover this one final challenge. Wait, what is Terracraft? Oh wait, that's a... God damn it, they made another fusion. Terracraft is a fusion between the two pixel sandbox games, Terraria and Minecraft. A fitting combination, right? This fusion is probably one of the cleanest ones I've seen. The mechanics from both maps blend together so seamlessly, it's sometimes hard to tell what mechanics are from what map. Despite being only 4 rooms, this map gets really intense. The gameplay is overall quite precise, using a mix of mechanics like the rail blocks, jellies, and jump crystals. It also has one of the coolest finales to any map. The final screen completely zooms out as you're being chased by the wall of flesh from Terraria, though this room is genuinely so hard due to how long it goes on for. I've got one small complaint though. Who in their right mind said this was expert difficulty? This map is 4 screens long and took me 2 hours and 13 minutes to beat. And you might think, oh yeah, well what's so crazy about that? You know what other 4-room map took me the same amount of time? Calcite did. The only difference is that Calcite is a Grandmaster plus 1 map on the hard list. Obviously I'm not saying that means Terracraft is hard list, but what I'm saying is that it is most certainly not expert. Alright, that's enough of that. A-tier map. So with that out of the way, we can just talk about the Pointside, the one final challenge in this collab. Well, that's what I would say at least. Because before we can truly talk about the Pointside, we have to talk about... The arcade is a completely separate section of the crossover collab lobby that essentially just features smaller scale maps that didn't quite make it to the main part of the lobby, that being the desktop PC. And yes, I did play all 7 of these maps. These ones are definitely a little more rough around the edges, but I'll try my best to give an honest ranking of all of these. Oh yeah, and also I'll talk about these in order of least favorite to favorite this time, just for a change. Number 7. CC Kids. CC Kids. Oh my god, CC Kids. Playing this map is torture. This map is based off a really old NES game called MC Kids, and while this game looks charming and all, the gameplay in Celeste just genuinely makes me want to die. Just like a lot of other maps based on platformers, your dash and wall jump are completely removed in this one. The first area is alright, but it starts to go off the rails pretty quickly in area 2, mixing in these conveyors with holdable boxes and moving enemies to make some of the most janky gameplay I've seen, and area 3 is even more deplorable with some of the most awfully precise and awkward moves I've ever seen. I'm sorry. I respect this map for what it is, but I just cannot stand playing it. C tier. Number 6, the Treehouse Woman. I really want to like this map because I think it's pretty cool, and I think the game it's based on, the Treehouse Man, has a really interesting and unique art style. Also, oh my god, this game is niche, what the hell? The entire map is set on a moving boat which constantly moves in one direction, or at least it's supposed to in theory. In reality, everything but the boat is moving, so it just ends up feeling really janky and inconsistent in many parts. Again, the gameplay just does not cut it for me here, C tier. Number 5, bonus Tetris. I don't really know why this map is listed as part of the arcade. I mean, I guess you buy the disc for it from the arcade, but it's played on the desktop, so I don't know. Either way, this map is a pretty chill experience. This map says screw to the whole Celeste thing and just recreates the entire game of Tetris, like, literally. There's only one stage to it, and that's just getting 40 lines and then you win, so overall I'd say it's an average B tier. Number 4, Puffle Launch Race. This map is based off a Club Penguin Puffle Launch. I'm not even going to pretend to know anything about Club Penguin, so let's just move on from that. I don't have any complaints with this map, I just think it's a little more simplistic in nature. It basically just takes the mechanics from that game and puts them into Celeste, making for some wholesome gameplay where you launch Madeline out of these cannons and stuff. B tier map. Number 3, Curly Brace Dance. Okay, so this map is cool, but I think it's just out of my skill set, and so it low-key felt kind of frustrating. This map is based off an optional boss in chapter 3 of I Wanna Be the Guy. I had to look through YouTube comment replies to find this out, by the way. This map is basically a rhythm dance game. The person says some directions to go in, and you have to press those directions with the right rhythm. Now, I like rhythm games and all, but this features two things which I really suck at. Short-term memory and pressing directions based off audio, and also just generally timing the stuff to the music. Maybe I'm not a real rhythm game player. So yeah, it was probably a little harder for me than I had to, but other than that, it's fun. B tier. Number 2, FIE Recycling Plant. I literally have no idea what game this is based off, so don't even ask me. This one is the hardest map in the arcade by far. You literally cannot move in the entire map. You instead press buttons to move blocks, activate springs, and switch between trash bags disguised as farewell fish to transport this box across to the end. It's a fun concept, but my brain is just not built for this amount of gimmick gameplay, so it ended up messing with me a lot. Still pretty fun though, solid B tier. And finally, number 1, Just a Dream. This is of course based off Yumi Nikki, a game that I glazed despite literally never having played it. Easily the biggest criticism for this one is that on the spectrum between being unfaithful and feeling too much like the original game, it's really skewed towards feeling like the original game. Every single Celeste mechanic is erased, replacing it for a Yumi Nikki style top-down movement. I know some people don't like this map because it's literally just walking around looking for stuff to do, but I think it's really relaxing exploring the bizarre and surreal worlds of this game. I'm sorry, but I just have to give this one an A tier. I really did think it was a fun time. Okay, and with that, we are done with the arcade in full. To give a final statement about the arcade, I think it's mostly a pretty fun extras section that provides some smaller sized maps about more niche games. Even though Just a Dream and FIE Recycling Plant are low-key bigger than some desktop maps, but whatever. And now it's finally time to talk about the Pointside, the one final challenge of this collab. Before starting this, I was slightly dreading playing the Pointside. After all, I just sat through the entirety of the Hollow Knight and Terraria map, and the impossible gameplay in Terracraft, so having a whole new massive ass map to play was not what I wanted to see. However, by the time I was done, I was honestly pleasantly surprised by how fun and coherent of an experience it was. Every room in this is based off a map in the collab, including arcade maps, and each room is very much hit or miss. You have some pretty awesome rooms in this, like the one for DELTARUNE, OMORI, and A Hat in Time, and some absolutely miserable ones like CC Kids, Earthblade, and Terraria. Oh my god, I need to rant about the Terraria room. I've been trying not to be too harsh on any of the maps here, but I just need to let it out now. This is the worst room in the entire collab by a long shot. Nothing in this room is lined up or set up. It's all weird, dysfunctional, needlessly precise gameplay while a blood crawler and an eater of souls chase you and go in the worst possible spots ever. Like, I'm sorry, this room completely killed my mood for playing this map when I first got to it. But okay, I'll calm down now. I think one of the aspects I like the most about the Pointside is that a few rooms in you get the choice between which section you want to do, where maps are grouped into separate categories based on their theming, like ocean depths and the caves. I really want to see more hard sides do this. I think grouping rooms into separate chunks like this makes these massive gauntlets way more manageable, rather than putting every room in a strict order which you have to slowly go through one by one. The hardest 3 maps are still at the end of the Pointside, those being It Steals, Subnautica, the second one, and Madeline's Brutal Orchestra. Oh yeah, funnily enough, Brutal Orchestra is actually in this one, even though most people probably wouldn't do that map. Also, Venus jump scare, what the hell is up with this music? The ending of this map is complete cinema. It goes through a collage of a bunch of previous maps, eventually leading to the map glitching and then your PC blue screening, only for Madeline to get out and go for a walk. I guess the ultimate message of this collab was that not playing Celeste is good. Or maybe that just taking a break sometimes is healthy, I don't know. In all fairness, I think the Pointside just has to get an S tier. It has its highs, it has its lows, but no other map felt as conclusive and final as this one. So, I guess we're just done, right? Every desktop map, every arcade map, all being concluded with the Pointside. Well, except that one, of course. Okay, fine, I'll talk about Brutal Orchestra. This map. The hardest in the collab. The only quote-unquote astral map. Side note, astral just means Grandmaster +1 if you're not familiar. I ended up putting this map off for a while before I ever beat it for one reason. I had never done anything this difficult before. For context, my hardest clear before playing this was Shattersite, which is often agreed to be around yellow GM+1 difficulty. This map was a whole sub-tier above that at red GM+1. And so right after I did the Pointside, I jumped into this map and began playing it. Oh yeah, I have a whole highlights video of my experience playing this on my channel if you want to see that, smile. And what was the outcome of it? Well, I absolutely loved it. It's so hard for me to review this map like I would review the others of this collab. After all, it's still a collab map, it's still based off an existing game, one which I've not played at that. It's just hard for me to talk about that when it's at such a high level of difficulty, but honestly, I can still see how some effort was put into translating this game to the best of the creator's abilities. A lot of the graphics from the original game are imported into this, along with a big overarching storyline that persists as you play through this map. Before you even begin playing, there's a gym section which teaches you all of the tech required to beat this map, just like the Grandmaster Subnautica did. Let me just say the tech here is way more complex than in Subnautica. Some of it I didn't even know existed until I played it. Granted, most of the tech that's taught here is using this map's true ending, which is a whole sub-tier higher than the normal ending at Green Grandmaster +2, so I don't think I'll be really talking about that one here. The biggest highlight of this map though is really just its gameplay. It's hard to exactly pinpoint what gameplay type this map goes for, but it would probably be something like tech spam or input density. The palette of mechanics is pretty small, mostly going for a combination of zippers, dream zippers, springs, and falling blocks, along with your standard mix of expert to grandmaster tech like ultras, doltras, dream hypers, and corner boosts. Oh yeah, and dash bouncers, the best tech in the game. This all concludes with the final room, which is long, dense, and most importantly, really fun. Yeah, for my second ever Red GM+1 screen, my first was Krypton Room 1 for those wondering, it went really smoothly and fun, taking me 5 hours and 51 minutes in total. I honestly couldn't have asked for a more fun first 3-star clear. Brutal Orchestra just does a lot right with this gameplay. And get this map is not 3 million years long. As much as I want to recommend this, I understand that most people just wouldn't have the patience to clear a map of this difficulty. After all, it is harder than anything in even Strawberry Jam. However, if you're at least a competent Grandmaster +1 player and you're up for the challenge, then sure, I'd recommend playing this map. Overall, my absolute favorite from this collab, S-tier map. Okay, are we done? I think so. I'm honestly so surprised I managed to scrape up the patience required to spend over 100 hours doing every single map from this collab, but I'm ultimately glad I did due to the immense variety presented by this mod. In fact, I'm not even the biggest fan of gimmick maps typically, and I found this mod to be extremely fun and engaging. Would highly recommend, even if it does get kinda silly with its difficulty sometimes. I do think Crossover Collab is one of the best modern examples of just how insane Celeste mods can get when enough people spend so much time and effort into making something at such a huge scale. Let me know if you have anything else to add about this collab in the comments. But for now, that will be it, so thanks all for watching.